Broadcasting. Broadcasting is the distribution of audio or video content to a dispersed audience via any electronic mass communications medium, but typically one using the electromagnetic spectrum, radio waves, in a one-to-many model. Broadcasting began with AM radio, which came into popular use around 1920 with the spread of vacuum tube radio transmitters and receivers. Before these, all forms of electronic communication, early radio, telephone, and telegraph were one-to-one, with the message intended for a single recipient. The term broadcasting evolved from its use as the agricultural method of sowing seeds in a field by casting them broadly about. It was later adopted for describing the widespread distribution of information by printed materials or by telegraph. In general usage, broadcasting most frequently refers to the transmission of information and entertainment programming from various sources to the general public. The U.S. Code of Federal Regulations Title 47 Part 97 defines broadcasting as transmissions intended for reception by the general public, either direct or relayed. History of broadcasting. The earliest broadcasting consisted of sending telegraph signals over the airwaves using Morse code, a system developed in the 1830s by Samuel F. B. Morse, physicists Joseph Henry and Alfred Vail. They developed an electrical telegraph system which sent pulses of electric current along wires which controlled an electromagnet that was located at the receiving end of the telegraph system. A code was needed to transmit natural language using only these pulses and the silence between them. Morse therefore developed the forerunner to modern international Morse code. This was particularly important for ship-to-ship and ship-to-shore communication, but it became increasingly important for business and general news reporting and as an arena for personal communication by radio amateurs. Audio broadcasting began experimentally in the first decade of the 20th century. By the early 1920s, radio broadcasting became a household medium, at first on the AM band and later on FM. Television broadcasting started experimentally in the 1920s and became widespread after World War II, using VHF and UHF spectrum. Satellite broadcasting was initiated in the 1960s and moved into general industry usage in the 1970s, with DBS, direct broadcast satellites, emerging in the 1980s. Originally, all broadcasting was composed of analog signals using analog transmission techniques, but in the 2000s, broadcasters switched to digital signals using digital transmission. Methods of broadcasting. Historically, there have been several methods used for broadcasting electronics media, audio and video to the general public. Telephone broadcasting, 1881 to 1932. The earliest form of electronic broadcasting, not counting data services offered by stock telegraph companies from 1867, if ticker tapes are excluded from the definition. Telephone broadcasting began with the advent of theater phone systems, which were telephone-based distribution systems allowing subscribers to listen to live opera and theater performances over telephone lines, created by French inventor Clement Ader in 1881. Telephone broadcasting also grew to include telephone newspaper services for news and entertainment, which were introduced in the 1890s, primarily located in large European cities. These telephone-based subscription services were the first examples of electronic broadcasting and offered a wide variety of programming. Radio broadcasting, experimentally from 1906, commercially from 1920. Audio signals sent through the air as radio waves from a transmitter picked up by an antenna and sent to a receiver. Radio stations can be linked in radio networks to broadcast common radio programs, either in broadcast syndication, simulcast, or sub-channels. Television broadcasting, telecast, experimentally incidentally from 1925, commercially from the 1930s. An extension of radio to include video signals. Cable radio, also called cable FM, from 1928, and cable television from 1932, both via coaxial cable, originally seven principally as transmission media for programming produced at either radio or television stations, but later expanding into a broad universe of cable-originated channels. Direct broadcast satellite (DBS) from 1974 and satellite radio from 1990, meant for direct-to-home broadcast programming as opposed to studio network uplinks and downlinks, provides a mix of traditional radio or television broadcast programming or both with dedicated satellite radio programming. Webcasting of video television from 1993 and audio radio from 1994 streams offers a mix of traditional radio and television station broadcast programming with a dedicated internet radio and internet television. Classifications of broadcasting: recorded and a live broadcast. The first regular television broadcast started in 1937. Broadcasts can be classified as recorded or live. The former allows correcting errors and removing superfluous or undesired material, rearranging it and applying slow motions and repetitions and other techniques to enhance the program. However, some live events like sports television can include some of the aspects, including slow motion clips of important goals, hits, etc. in between the live television telecasts. Live broadcast from the studio is usually indicated at the studio doorpost to keep everyone alert as well as minimize distractions and noise. This is usually done with an on-air sign illuminated in red while the broadcast goes on. American radio network broadcasters habitually forbade pre-recorded broadcasts in the 1930s and 1940s, requiring radio programs played for the Eastern and Central time zones to be repeated 3 hours later for the Pacific time zone. This restriction was dropped for special occasions, as in the case of the German dirigible airship Hindenburg disaster at Lakehurst, New Jersey in 1937. During World War II, pre-recorded broadcasts from war correspondents were allowed on U.S. radio. In addition, American radio programs were recorded for playback by armed forces radio stations around the world. A disadvantage of recording first is that the public may know the outcome of an event from another source, which may be a spoiler. In addition, pre-recording pre-event live radio announcers from deviating from an officially approved script, as occurred with propaganda broadcasts from Germany in the 1940s and with Radio Moscow in the 1980s. Many events are advertised as being live, although they are often recorded live, sometimes called live to tape. This is particularly true of performances of musical artists on radio when they visit for an in-studio concert performance. Similar situations have occurred in television production and news broadcasting. For example, The Cosby Show, which starred around 1992 in America, is recorded in front of a live television studio audience. A broadcast may be distributed through several physical means. If coming directly from the radio studio at a single station or television station, it is simply sent through the studio transmitter link to the transmitter and hence from the television antenna located on the radio mast and tower out to the world. Programming may also come through a communication satellite, played either live or recorded for later transmission. Networks of stations may simulcast the same programming at the same time, originally via microwave link, now usually by satellite. Distribution to stations or networks may also be through physical media such as magnetic tape, compact disc, CD, DVD, and sometimes other formats. Usually, these are included in another broadcast, such as when Electronic News Gathering returns a story to the station for inclusion on a news program. The final leg of broadcast distribution is how the signal gets to the listener or viewer. It may come over the air as with a radio station or television station to an antenna and radio receiver, or may come through cable television or cable radio or wireless cable via the station or directly from a network. The internet may also bring either internet satellite radio or streaming media television to the recipient, especially with multicasting, allowing the signal and bandwidth to be shared. The term broadcast network is often used to distinguish networks that broadcast an over-the-air television signals that can be received using a tuner television inside a television set with a television antenna from so-called networks that are broadcast only via cable television, cablecast, or satellite television that uses a dish antenna. The term broadcast television can refer to the television programs of such networks. Economic and structural models of broadcast organizations. There are several structures applied in the systematic running of different designs of media organizations, as well as the means of providing financial support for continuous broadcasting in accordance with the system of operations of these organizations. Commercial broadcasting, usually privately owned, profit-oriented stations, channels, networks, or services providing programming to the public, supported by the sale of airtime to advertisers for radio or television advertisements during or in breaks between programs, often in combination with cable or pay cable subscription fees. Public broadcasting, usually non-profit, publicly owned stations or networks supported by license fees, government funds, grants from foundations, corporate underwriting, audience memberships, contributions, or a combination of these. Community broadcasting, a form of mass media in which a television station or a radio station is owned, operated, or programmed by a community group to provide programs of local interests known as local programming. Community stations are most commonly operated by non-profit groups or cooperatives. However, in some cases, they may be operated by a local college or university, a cable company, or a municipal government. Broadcasters may rely on a combination of these business models. For example, in the United States, National Public Radio (NPR) and the Public Broadcasting Service (PBS) television supplements public membership subscriptions and grant with funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting (CPB), which is allocated annually by Congress. U.S. public broadcasting corporate and charitable grants are generally given in consideration of underwriting spots, which differ from commercial advertisements in that they are governed by specific FCC restrictions, which prohibit the advocacy of a product or a call to action. We would love to seize this medium to express extreme gratitude to all members of staff of DAR Communications PLC, our parents and sponsors, our alma maters and lecturers, as well as to all who have contributed to our growth and development one way or the other in the media field.
We hear the sounds of glory, we hear the drums of victory. They call it humble beginnings, we call it a vision unsung. Today champions are born, champions with possibility, raising us up to the top of our game as our fellow students will be chanting our name. In our team's colors, strength of our dreams, igniting the passion in our hearts. With high FL, we're the game changers. This will be the best time of our life. We'll be remembered as true champions, as the greatest in the game. With high FL, we're game changers. That's who we are. That's who we are. North to the south, to the east, to the west, we're united in the game we love. Showing the world who we are on one stage, in one voice, in one voice. In our team's colors, strength of our dreams, igniting the passion in our hearts. With high FL, we're the game changers. This will be the best time of our life. We'll be remembered as true champions. the sound of history. This is where it all begins. The sweat from the energy within, water the seeds of our future goals. Our future